This is Twit.
Last month, Apple banned Tumblr's iOS app from the App Store after reports of child pornography on the platform. Then, a few weeks ago, Tumblr announced that it would be banning all adult content in order to create a better, more positive Tumblr. Now, this week, the ban has gone into effect. Joining us to talk about what that means is Aja Romano, who writes about internet culture for Vox. Thanks so much for joining us, Aja.
Hi, how are you guys?
So before we get to the fact that Tumblr's system for flagging adult content is predictably flawed, as you called it, tell us what happens to all that pornography that's on Tumblr?
Well, that's a really good question. I think it depends who is making the erotic content in question, who the audience for that specific content is, and also, just thinking about Tumblr cultures in general. Where are they going to go and what are they going to want? So people who are on Tumblr who are doing, say, sex education, they're probably not going to want to go to the same place that, for example, the furry community is, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So I guess we should probably take a step back. I mean, I had a LiveJournal, I had a blog, but then I sort of missed Tumblr. I don't know. I mean, I know of it, but I never had a Tumblr. I feel like it's this culture that I am only now beginning to understand, partly from reading your piece and hearing you talk on the Vox podcast. But I mean, what makes the adult content on Tumblr so different than in part different than adult content you find on the rest of the web?
Well, for one thing, adult content, when we say that phrase, we're talking about a lot of different things, right? Mm-hmm. So on the one hand, you can have actual explicit content, pornography. On Tumblr, porn GIFs are very popular. And you can also have, erotic fan art. You can have erotic original art. You can have, nude memes. And by nude memes, the example that I'm thinking of is the artwork "Truth Coming Out of Her Well to Shame Mankind," mm-hmm. which is a really popular meme, but it's a naked woman. And it's a piece of art. So there are all different kinds of contexts and ways in which quote unquote adult content can be used and can be interpreted. So that's sort of what you're looking at. You're looking at the way that Tumblr tried to ban our adult content was to say, okay, X, Y, Z kinds of content are not okay. Usually this sort of thing that involves like explicit sexual content. If you draw, for example, you draw a piece of fan art and two people are naked, but it's eroticized, but they're not having actual penetrative sex or explicit sex. I think Tumblr was trying to say that wouldn't count under the new ban, but if they were having actual sex, then it would count. So it's a really weird, nebulous line that they're trying to draw. And of course, it's made lots of people mad. So,
well, yeah, I mean, just in describing it, it sounds complicated, let alone on the enforcement side of things. How exactly are they enforcing this? Is this entirely algorithmically picked, which is, why we're seeing some pretty hilarious false positives? Is there also a mixture of humans kind of in the mix making those determinations along the way? And then I guess the greater question would be, if that's the case, how have they been instructed? Because like you said, it's like a minefield of what's allowed and what's not. Really hard to determine where that line is.
Right. So like many platforms, we're seeing algorithmic decisions being made. We're seeing automatic flagging and automatic filtering. And then you can appeal that. Supposedly you can appeal it to a human. But I'm not sure how well the appeal system is working so far. So.
And it's flagging all kinds of things. That's been just like the most hilarious thing about it. It even flagged Tumblr's announcement.
Yes, right.
Yes, supposedly it flagged Tumblr's announcement, a reblog of the announcement. So you can see that it was flagging pictures of deserts, pictures of fruit and flowers. So it's got a lot of work to do, basically. So
now you mentioned LiveJournal, or we talked a little bit about LiveJournal just a couple of minutes ago. That's actually a really apropos comparison to be made because, and by the way, I never had a LiveJournal. I feel like I missed out. I also never had a Tumblr, but anyways, back in 2007, LiveJournal also kind of went through this moment of air quotes growth, growing up when it cracked down on its own explicit content. And that really, by many people, and you point this out in your article, seemed to be the beginning of the end of LiveJournal.
Right. In many ways it was, because up until that point, I think LiveJournal was started in, I think, 1998, I want to say. It seems a little early. Between 1998 and 2000, the year 2000. And up until 2007, when all this happened, it had a very, very loyal user base. They were very, I think I described them as a bunch of misfits on the podcast the other day. Just very sort of grassroots community and culture. And after that, it was like this sort of, I want to say, this idealistic, naive belief that you could have this community without any repercussions sort of vanished forever. And I don't think that trust in LiveJournal, in the corporation having the user's best interest at heart, ever really, I don't think that ever really came back, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So Tumblr was bought by Yahoo, that, you know, and now, I mean, who's running Tumblr now?
So right now, Verizon, Yahoo sold, Verizon took over Oath, which is basically the company that owns Tumblr now. And both Oath and Verizon have recently been devalued on the stock market. So there's a lot of uncertainty around those companies and what's going to happen to them.
And tell us about Archive of Your Own. I had never heard about that, but you write about this site, Archive of Your Own.
Yeah, it's a part of the Organization for Transformative Works, which is a nonprofit fan-run organization, which is designed to protect and basically give a home to fan works so that they will not be susceptible to censorship by corporations hosting them on platforms that don't really understand the community. And Archive of Our Own is really popular. It's grown a lot since it was founded in 2008. And it's just very, it's full of fanfic. And because it's nonprofit, the idea was to basically make sure that the fans could control their own content and have a say in the direction of the platform that hosted them. And so far, it's done really well.
So what I kind of learned about Tumblr in reading your article and kind of, you know, obviously over the last couple of weeks, we've heard a lot about this, you know, Tumblr gets rid of porn and you know, the ramifications of that. What I learned through your article, it really kind of dives deeper into the community on Tumblr and why they were attracted to Tumblr. It's not necessarily just that there's pornographic material there, but it's that kind of, I hate to use the word fringe, but some of these alternative sorts of communities could enjoy, you know, their existence there. For example, you pointed out fanzines, you know, kind of like the lost art of fanzine could thrive there. It could be a little bit edgier, but the platform was friendly to that part of that side of things. And now Tumblr is taking this really aggressive stance to get rid of things, and people are trying to figure it out. As a non-user, my mind instantly jumps to, well, then Tumblr just really kind of, you know, set off a time bomb on itself, right? Like if that's why people are using it and now suddenly they don't think they can use it in that way anymore, Tumblr's days are numbered. How would you feel as a Tumblr user? How do you feel about that statement? Do you think that's accurate?
I think it's really complicated because, for one thing, you always want to, like, the belief that Tumblr is just porn has been a widespread stereotype that has sort of plagued the site since the beginning, and I think has made it really easy to devalue the immense cultural contributions that Tumblr users have made over the years. I mean, the phrase that I like to use is that Tumblr has consistently punched above its cultural weight. Like, it's shipped so many memes direct to BuzzFeed and then directly into mainstream culture. It has influenced the way that we use linguistics online. It's influenced meme culture to an insanely intense degree. And I think that all of these things don't really get credit, but I think that they're part of what root people to the site. You know, other outside of this idea that we're all just here for eroticism or whatever, which is never really true. It's more that eroticized works and erotic content are parts of the overall glue that we use to communicate and talk to each other, right? So the question is, how important is that, and how closely will people seek to continue building community on a site where they feel betrayed? You know, like on LiveJournal, the issue was not so much that LiveJournal suddenly came in and eliminated a bunch of content at once, because once people started to complain, they really backed off a lot of it, and they sort of had a couple of I guess 8 steps forward and then 80 steps back. They kept sort of starting and failing and then trying to start again and failing again, but they were making strides to listen to the community. But once that element of trust has been shattered, you have a whole bunch of new problems cropping up, because people aren't as willing to give you the benefit of the doubt the next time you make a different kind of
Mm-hmm. One of the things I think that whenever people say, Facebook is stealing all our information and selling it, and Instagram is owned by Facebook and it's no different, and you want to make the positive argument about the internet. The internet allows people to find each other that couldn't find each other before, like people with like-minded interests, marginalized people who felt alone. It gave people a voice that didn't have a voice before. Where can people go now? Like where? I mean, I have 3 teenagers at home, and they're all on Instagram and Snapchat. Like, there's no LiveJournal, there's no Tumblr. Is there any place, and will there be any place like this, or is this whole era just gone?
There was a piece in The Ringer that was published today that was talking about how Mark Zuckerberg represents not just Facebook, but he represents sort of a more collective, universal sense of mourning for the internet that was lost prior to the age of social media and these gigantic consolidated platforms. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I think that's really, the piece is really impactful, but on another level, it gets to what you're saying, where can we go? Part of this is that people don't seem to want what they don't know they can have, like if you were never on LiveJournal, you don't know that you can have social media platforms that are both intimate and sort of quirky and offbeat and under the radar, that also allow you to have deeply intense discussions, because everything isn't condensed down to 130 characters, or 240 characters. You don't know what you've missed, in a sense, because if you're just growing up to the internet that is all social platforms or, social media, maybe that's all you know, so that's all you're looking for, right? With Tumblr was such a weird conflux. I guess I should say it still is such a weird conflux of people who came from LiveJournal who wanted like long, intense blogging experiences, and people who also have one foot in Instagram who want, image heavy experiences, and people who, just want to send each other like role play ask blogs all day, like just all these different ways of using the platform that people made their own. I want to say what you really need is you need a space that's new and a space that feels slightly, I guess, fresh and different enough from anything else that's out there, that also allows people to sort of come in and manipulate it and use it in ways that the creator probably didn't intend, because that allows people to invest heavily in the site. That allows them to begin creating new types of media on the site. Like Tumblr gave all kinds of new media. Like we had new what we call GIF sets, which are basically stories told in GIF forms across a number of GIFs at once. And Tumblr, the way that Tumblr used reaction GIFs, of course, like lots of different things about that platform came about. Like they worked themselves into the culture because that was how users were using the platform, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about where we need to, like where people want to go next, you have to think about what are they happy with where they are now? What parts of Twitter, what parts of Instagram are they happy with, and what are they going to be looking for elsewhere? Mm-hmm. As I look across the internet, it strikes me that one of the things that Tumblr really gave people that we don't really have much of anymore is this, this sense of community discussion. Mm-hmm. I mean, community discussion on Tumblr was something of a storm, but it was, you could do it, you could have it. You could have community discussions that were lengthy and people could respond, also being lengthy, and it wasn't taboo. It wasn't really looked down upon. But if you look at what the options are, you don't really have other like widely trafficked social media platforms that allow you to have that kind of intensive discussion. And so I think that that's probably the next gap that people will be looking to fill. Mm-hmm.
I guess they'll just have to maybe start talking to each other again.
No. That's preposterous.
It's either that or they're just going to wind up on YouTube and TikTok doing 15-second videos, and that's it. Like, that's the future.
Yeah.
So, fight for what you want is basically the moral.
Right, yeah. And I know whatever my teenagers do, it's not going to come from me. Whatever I recommend is not where they want to go. So I know that.
And maybe it was until you got involved.
Right. You have to, reverse engineer that situation. Right. Don't go on TikTok. TikTok's awful.
Yeah, exactly.
TikTok is awful, but
Yes. Aja Romano writes for Vox. She writes about internet culture for Vox. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks. It's my pleasure.
Thank you, Aja.
Take care.